Hello everybody and welcome to another week of Tryhard Tuesdays where we learn to try a little bit harder at Dota 2. I am sitting here with my co-host every moon from dusk till noon, from December through June, my lovely friend Mr. Blue. How's it going?
Cut it out, you're making me swoon.
You're not supposed to get in on this. This is a one-man show, butt out. And sitting here with me as well is my friend and yours, AG. How's it going, AG?
It's Christmas, boys. Actually, it's Christmas and Hanukkah all wrapped in one.
Yep. Because you get things throughout the days but it's like a work-based Hanukkah. Like you have to work really hard. Because I bought a level 1. He's talking about the battle pass, of course. Everybody, it is here, and it's gigantic. It has so many implications for the game. It is like Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and every other awesome holiday rolled into one for a Dota 2 fan, and we'll be discussing that a ton. What is your guys' initial reactions on this thing?
AG, I'll let you have your first go because I'm still just like my jaw's still dropped.
Yeah, I'm speechless is basically where I'm at, but like I've not seen so much content put into like one battle pass. And when they first started the compendiums, I never thought it would be like this, but
it's pretty fascinating how much the idea has evolved is what I'm seeing too, because I've played since around before TI3. That was my first compendium, and it was just like I was just like, wow, this is so cool. I've never seen anyone do anything like this. It's like fantasy Dota rolled into one, but for the real thing. And it just like everything's just rolled together so well, and all the information's organized. It really helped build the brands of some teams and helped people understand the game more. With this, I just see that idea taken to a whole new level of engagement. They've done like a multi-level approach to getting people involved in competition, which we'll discuss a little bit later on in the conversation. And I think it's just really fascinating. It shows that they're engaging with their fan base a lot more. And most importantly, they're thinking about improving the game outside of the game itself, which could be a bad thing as well if you think about it. But Blue, what's your reaction on this?
Yeah, I think it's just a comprehensive addition to everything that people have been, well, not everything, but a lot of the things that people have been looking for in Dota 2. I mean, the initial, when you start out with Dota 2, when it was still in beta, there wasn't a ranked, and so people were looking for a way to do ranked. And then I think one of the awesome additions that people aren't talking about because they're still like they're still drooling over these new hats and immortal treasures and the compendium and the battle pass and all this stuff, but on top of that is the battle cups. And I think the battle cups are a perfect evolution of what like a competitive environment can be, and being able to take that environment and just make it into a weekly kind of event for people who want to participate. It just makes so much sense. It was one of the beautiful parts of like Warcraft 3 ladder system is that they had things like this. So I'm really happy to see it show up in Dota 2. And I don't know, man, I'm just ready. I already played a game and I just want to play some more. It's just the battle pass is a genius idea. Everything that they've done with this, I like the idea so far. Obviously the execution, we still need, the jury is still out on that. And the fact that the Legion Commander is like the big prestige item when you hit level 225 is like making me cry a little bit because fuck that hero.
It's like kind of
but everything else
it's kind of like salt in the wounds there. I saw that and I was like, there's a lot of, even the HUD itself for the International this year has a
it's like Dota 2 is like blue balling me.
And it's just like, what are you doing? This is
they're like building up and then
disgusting.
Like, oh, wait, what? Oh,
it's like a big joke at the end. Like you're like, this is great, and you're like, what's the end thing? Legion. It's like you just got dueled. It feels like, but it shows a real evolution of mindset from Valve when it comes to getting everybody engaged, and it really shows that they are thinking about this on an interesting level, because they could just be like, there's plenty of amateur Dota leagues if people want to get involved with that around this time. We don't need to worry about that. But they're making it something that's streamlined in the game that will get people more involved and playing in a group of people to achieve a goal, which, it's something you'll maybe care about a little bit more than you care about your party MMR when you play with your friends or something like that. And that creates an environment that's good for everybody. It's definitely goodwill around Dota 2, don't you think, AG?
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed I too have been playing this game for quite a long time, and ever since they've started doing the international with the game, it's right about that time in the summer where I noticed like more and more of my friends who play Dota 2, but who have like kind of taken a break from the game or play it very casually, like they jump into the game right around when the majors, like when the major being the international is going on in past years. And this is just pushing that window out. And like, sure enough, today I log online and like there's more people than ever on my friends list on Dota 2. And I think that's a good thing overall.
Yeah, and it gets everybody involved. It makes sure that I don't know. I'd like to discuss, as an early topic on this, like the whole notion of a paywall, because it's $9.99 to get in on this thing, and there is now a premium, so to speak, ranked queue that only people who have purchased the battle pass can play on. And you've seen such practices kind of criticized in games like Battlefield, where you pay money to be part of a premium queue, as they called it in that game. But for this one, it's just the battle pass queue. And you can reconfigure your MMR and use it later after the international. But it is $10 to access that feature. How do you guys feel about that? Somehow they've left it all out in the open, but haven't called it what it is. You know what I mean? Which is kind of a paywall. I think this type of work definitely deserves payment, but it's still an interesting notion for a free-to-play game. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I like your point about it, because I feel like it does need to be mentioned. Like we're like gushing over how awesome everything looks, but you're right. I mean, it's something that should be discussed. I think, after thinking about it on my own, and just how the notion of Dota 2 is built around being a free to play game. But that being said, there's certain things that just like should come at a premium, and one of those things should be like this international MMR, and I realize that is forming a paywall. But to me, if you're not willing to pay $10 and you really are all about recalibrating your MMR, you're probably going to be one of those guys who does the Smurf accounts, So I don't know, if you don't want to pay, you could always go back to doing that. If you do want to play, you can use this and keep your old account. So I don't know, I feel like there's plenty of reason to buy for it, or to buy it and not complain. I don't know, what do you think, AG?
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is that there's options, and anytime there's options, I think that's a good thing. That's a good way to approach it. Like, sure, there are aspects in here that people might call like a paywall or pay to play, but at the same time, like you could still experience a lot of content in this game without paying a dime. And that being said, like the amount of effort just from up front, we all three of us really have only kind of like touched the iceberg in terms of looking through this whole compendium, and there's a lot of things that have not been released yet, but just the compendium itself is so crisp for something that's only $10. So that's my opinion, but I think like just the fact that there are options is still what makes this, I think, okay. And I you can kind of go about it any way you want, and everybody's going to have differing opinions, but at the end of the day, you can still play the game for free if you want.
Yeah, I remember some people on our Dota a while ago, when the servers were really beat up on like US West and stuff. This was like a year ago. They proposed an idea to have premium servers that you could pay $10 a month, like a registration fee for an MMO or something like that, to only play on these premium servers with other members like that. And it was an interesting notion at the time, because, I mean, people want to play with people who, speak their language most of the time, or they want to play with people who are around their own skill level, ready to play with someone and accomplish a goal. You know what I mean? And this person seemed to think that it was an idea to do it. And I kind of see it being applied here. And I see that now, instead of something where people can smurf easily, they need to buy that $9.99 paywall to get through it. And it seems like Valve didn't quite make it something where they're like, okay, you need to pay a lot of money to get in, but it's a little bump, you know what I mean, that makes it so you can play in a different kind of environment. And I do appreciate how they went about it. The compendium has tons of content, much more than just that queue, but I found it to be a really interesting thing I didn't even know they were thinking about.
Yeah, like my past experience as a gamer is I've played MMOs before, and like my primary MMO, like many people kind of in our community, was World of Warcraft. And listen, that was like, $15 down the drain in terms of like every month you weren't getting new content necessarily. Like sure, they had patches, but to me, like the amount of content that I get out of some of these battle passes rivals what I could be paying for an MMO each month. So to me, I think like for the for the majority of players who consider themselves like Dota as their primary game, I don't see this as like a huge barrier in terms of making that payment for the content that's provided.
I love that it binds to your account and like that's it. You know, this is your battle pass. You can go into the ranked queue. This is it adds a little bit of like a sense of identity, I think, in terms of like you can't just make a Smurf. It feels like they're tackling so many problems at once with this that I'm really a big fan. So
I was gonna say is from a business perspective, they have to have some return on investment when they offer these new modes and allow people to be manipulating, their MMR in that they can essentially recalibrate if they play enough. So it gives people what they want, and at the same time makes sense from a business standpoint in that they need, they could provide this service, but if they're providing it for free, I don't necessarily know what the ROI would be on that, but they're going through this extra effort, and they've already built out this amazing compendium, and the people that are really interested in calibrating, let's be honest, the majority of those people are the people that would buy a compendium, right? Yeah. I don't know too many people who are casual Dota 2 fans who would pay a compendium just to be able to do things like that. So I think it makes sense on
really
that
cool
end too.
Valve has mastered the microtransaction, right? I mean, this is the best marketing ever. I don't know a Dota fan that won't buy this. So, I mean, I guess the international queue might just end up being the same thing, but without duplicate accounts playing in the same queue kind of thing. Because you're not probably going to buy 3 or 4 of these things at $9.99 each. You're probably going to buy the one that's $26 or whatever, for one. And you're not going to spend that money. It's just enough that people won't want to buy multiples for multiple accounts, at least the average Dota fan. And people will probably buy levels instead, you know what I mean, with that money, so they can get the cool stuff one time rather than just getting the mediocre stuff once. It's they've mastered the microtransaction, and it shows that through Team Fortress 2 and all that stuff and CSGO to an extent with that market, that they've really managed to create a product that helps everybody, adds in those things maybe mechanically the client itself was missing. It should have a recalibration option. I mean, let's be honest. Are we the same players we were 4 years ago when I was spamming Sniper constantly? You know what I mean? Like, it's like having that option is very interesting. And Valve has mastered the microtransaction. But in terms of other stuff in the compendium, there is, of course, terrain. There's this new river dyeing system. And by that I mean like you use a certain vial and you break it in the river and it changes the color of it, kind of giving your games a little bit of variety, I guess, in that weird way.
Wait, what?
Did you not
say
know
that
about
again?
this?
I had no idea. What a vial?
Yeah, it's a a vial that you. Okay, so if you buy one or whatever, you get one. And you use it, it dyes the river, and someone cannot use another dye over it. That's the color of the river for the game. You can change it all sorts of colors.
It lasts 10 minutes, it says.
Oh, 10 minutes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So not quite. I don't know. That's interesting, I guess. I wish it kind of lasted all game. But.
And it has charges, it appears. I don't necessarily know how the item... I don't know how it appears in your game. Like, is this an actual probably, in-game item?
Yeah. It's like, remember snowballs and stuff from years ago that you could like throw?
Yeah.
Like, I imagine it'll be in that slot, or the coal, I think was one, and you'll just use it there probably with the special use button that you can just bind.
What level do you have to be to get this?
I don't know, man. I don't even think do you get it in the compendium?
Yeah, you do. I'm checking.
Starts at level 89.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it some of the some of the rewards it will repeat. So like, let's say one example might be that it's like slime. Okay, and you might get slime at like level 200, and then you might get it again at 250. Like, therefore, I imagine that it refills your that charge, because it says the item has 10 charges. So I don't know if that's like 10. Like, let's say I hit level 60 or whatever it is, where I get the first one. I have 10 charges. Does it keep track of the amount of charges that I have? Therefore, like, I can only do it 10 times for 10 minutes across every game that I play.
Yeah, I think probably that's how it works.
Right. So, and this compendium has a lot of levels in it, and unlike compendiums in the past where you get to 1,000 and get that Aegis, like there's some new items and new additions like later on. Like I know like, one of the last ones you get towards the end is like in the 900s, and it's blood, so you could dye the river like blood. There's one that's like oil. There's a whole bunch of items like throughout the compendium. So like don't scroll to like 250 or whatever it is where the LC is, and then expect that to be the last thing. There's this compendium through the levels is just chock full of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like they are definitely far more prepared than they have been in previous TIs as far as the buying power of their user base, right?
Yeah, you're kind of breaking up a little bit, Blue.
Yeah, I was going to say the buying power of the user base is very different nowadays, and I think they've realized that with this kind of compendium.
Yeah, and they've kind of rolled all these different things into one, which is the majors have definitely helped them kind of take a few cracks at the compendium and the battle pass stuff to really get it down this time. It's really interesting. I think I would recommend it to anybody. Anything else you guys want to say before we move on, guys? Just something real quick to add before we get these guys' closing statements is none of us really know how this stuff works. It just came out a couple hours ago. So I think we're all going to kind of see how this develops. And as Blue said earlier in the show, we're going to see how the execution kind of comes down to all this stuff. And maybe it gives us a different experience. Maybe it isn't that much different, in terms of the cues and stuff. But what do you guys have to add before we move on?
Well, I want to talk about taunts, okay? Has anyone seen the taunts that are available?
Yeah,
I checked a few of them.
Yeah.
Okay, like what is your favorite taunt? Because, I don't know, even the level 1 with the Vengeful Spirit has me cracking up. It's like the
yes,
chicken,
exactly.
The Arrested Development
Arrested
chicken.
Development. Yeah. That's my favorite one so far.
And that's level 1.
The Royal Raspberry, dude.
Yeah. And then Nature's Prophet, Make It Rain. I think it's a tie between those two for me, because the Nature's Prophet, like he starts doing a dance, and then like gold just starts falling down from the sky. This shit is awesome.
That's when the big majority comes out of those taunts. I feel like throughout the years during international time, like you don't see them.
The taunts have not. Otherwise. The taunt game has not really evolved, but I think this compendium is finally like taunts are here. Come on, make use of them, because I don't know, there's only been a couple I would say that are really fun to use, but like the Tide one is super fun, but I feel like a lot of these I would see a lot.
Yeah, this is really interesting. It shows a lot of character in the game, and it looks like it's just general fun. It's a fun box for Dota stuff that kind of keeps giving. There's so much cool stuff in here, guys. Definitely, if you have, I bought the poor man's compendium at $9.99. One big criticism I've seen on Reddit already is that there's no way you can reach some of these higher levels by just playing, as some people's criticism. You need to buy it. And as we can see on our friends list currently, boys, there's someone, I'm not going to name names here, but we know him well at .p, has a 127 level battle level compendium right now. And that is insane. So that's one big criticism of the item, is they almost bait you into spending more money because you see all this cool stuff. Or you could just play, and maybe you'll reach level 50 by the time it's over, but you had a good time and you still got your money's worth with all the mechanical stuff they changed. So
yeah,
that's one criticism that I read that I found kind of interesting that I hadn't thought about before. But with that being said, I think we want to move on to the next leg of our conversation. We're going to be continuing our team building conversation with AG here on the show with me and Blue. He was on the show 2 weeks ago. Is that right? 2 weeks ago. And we discussed kind of team cohesion and communication. So this will be continuing that series. And of course, we will be kind of handling it to the best of our ability in our limited experience in our amateur teams. So welcome again, AG. Thanks for joining us. What do you have to start out with, AG? Anything interesting about your games or what's been going on lately?
I think one thing we've worked on over the past week or so is we've kind of changed, I feel like, the macro strategy of our team a little bit. And I think early on we were trying a lot of different strategies, particularly around like the 4 position, the position that I play, where it's like maybe we go with a more team fight centric 4, or a greedy 4, or a jungling 4, or a roaming 4. And I think like in recent weeks or in the recent days, maybe given sort of like the strengths of you at the position one. I feel like we've kind of tried to tailor our macro strategy more to what fits our strengths rather than like something we're not used to. So I've been playing more of like standard position fours, and we've been running more of like a safe lane, tri lane, and then roaming as dual supports. And I think that's worked out really well. Like kind of going back to what we're strong at, what we're comfortable with.
Yeah, and that's something in the growing pains kind of with a team is just figuring out that you can see the execution of certain strategies through Pro Dota, and you can see these drafts and draft cohesion and everything like that come off. But you can get that perfect draft sometimes, and it just won't come to fruition because your team can't necessarily execute it, or they haven't practiced it, or whatever. And kind of figuring out with our team that we do have these certain strategies that we can execute that maybe are mid to high level, but we have some things that we can't because we just haven't practiced it. And so to think that we can just tackle these high skill ceiling heroes or drafts and just do it on the first time in a competition just isn't realistic. So playing to those strengths is really important. Blue, how are your games going?
Oh, oh,
That good, huh?
oh man, like it's been a long time since I've hit a Dota slide, and man, I am sliding. I played a couple calibration matches on my Smurf account as the solo support. Not great. I did all right. I put down all the wards. I was doing the 4 stabs and things like that, but it was one of those can't collect the kittens, and they all kind of spread out, and then they kind of die on their own. And then they come back to me and they're like, "Where were you?" I'm like, "What do you mean? You wanted, like I'm trying to ward here, and you just asked me to ward." And there's a lot of that going on, and
Yep.
and then me just kind of sighing and going back into my Final Fantasy X hole.
Oh, you've been playing the HD remake.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and that's been my like emo solace has been some FFX.
That's something.
Yeah, man, it's been a lot of solo support in a couple games, and then when I have played with some friends, it's unranked and it's going perfectly. Like I don't know why, it's just something with ranked. I think I've lost like seven or 8 ranked matches in a row, and I won like 2 or 3 unranked in a row until today.
Interesting.
I don't know. It's weird, man.
Well, so this must be another motivation to enter into a different ranked queue, right? This battle pass and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I called up Gabe. I was like, "Listen, man, I'm tired of making these Smurf accounts. Come on, brother, like hook me up." And he's like, "Dude, I got you."
He was like, "Quit calling my house. That was one time."
And tell your boy Wazoo to shut the hell up.
No, he's like, tell Wazoo holla, and I'll be like,
that's definitely
tell Gabe to not contact me.
Gabe Newell is a frequent user of the holla. Yep. People don't know that.
I can see that.
But you've been standing in for our team a little bit, and we've played some games together, and we've lost a bit. You know what I mean? And that's going to be the theme of this episode is taking a loss and how you learn from it, how you communicate about it, and kind of what it can mean for your team. I've said this on the show before, but Puppy recently tweeted out you learn much more from a loss than you learn from a win in these tournaments. And this is about their, not this recent tournament at the Epicenter, but the one before where they weren't doing very well with their new lineup or something. And it's interesting because this is a sentiment we've all heard very much playing this competitive game, but we still don't like to lose at Dota, obviously. And if you take it wrong, then you don't learn much from it, right? And if 5 people take it wrong, then they start blaming each other. That can be very, very bad for the team. So, Blue, how do you take a loss with the team? What is your average go-to post-game ritual in that sense?
So, yeah, I don't know. For me, it depends on the team that you play with. Some react differently than others. Like some people talk a lot after a game. Other people like just you need to like force them to talk because they don't want to say anything, and it just gets really quiet in the chat and no one wants to say anything, and you're like, all right, well, someone's got to say something, because you can't just like leave your VoIP chat on that note because it's super depressing. But I don't know. I think for example, the team that we were on, we had a hard time getting everyone together to talk after the match. I think because tensions run high when things like that were happening, and then people don't feel like they're ready to talk at that point. But sometimes that could be exactly what you need. It all depends on the situation you're in, and also the context of what the loss is in, right? If you're playing on the ladder, or you're just scrimming against some other teams, and it's in an environment where it's not a must-win situation, I think it's vital that you talk right after the game. Otherwise, I don't think the team knows collectively what it learned from the match. And then on the flip side, if you're in a game and it's high stakes, or it's for us it would be like an 80-2L match, maybe you don't want to have that talk right away. Maybe you need to be like, all right, let's take 5-10 minutes, kind of relax, collect ourselves, and think about what really was the problem, and not focus so much on the last 2 minutes of play.
That's interesting. AG, what are your thoughts on that? What are your post-game rituals?
Yeah, I would definitely echo a lot of what I've been thinking about over like the last few weeks is that those are wise words from Puppy, and I totally agree with them. And one thing to remember is that like after a loss, in one respect, it is good to just sort of like put it in the back, like have like those throwaway games where they say in sports, like burn the tape, forget about it, move on to the next one, and that's like fine in the moment or in a tournament or when you're playing like a back-to-back in a best of two series or something like that. But for me, like you have to remember that you don't learn anything from a loss if you never actually internalize like what happened and what transpired in that loss. And I think like sometimes for the sake of time, the easiest way to do that is to discuss right after a match. But I think like if I were to set up like an ideal scenario, I think having like, let's say if your practice day is on Tuesdays, like having Wednesday as being like your film study day, if you will, like meet for 30 minutes like at a minimum and just sort of discuss what happened the day before, because at least for me, like it takes a good like 8 hours or so for me to like internalize Dota, and that might seem like crazy, but I can't tell you how many moments I'll just be like riding the train to work and I'll just be like oh man, like I just this one play I didn't I've been thinking about it so much, and just like something dawns on me, and
You're doing like the Dota square on the window, like in the fog of the window.
Exactly.
You're like, God damn it, what happened? No, I know exactly what you mean. And sometimes like those feelings take a while to adjust, but I've heard a lot of people say Dota 2 and getting in fights after games is a lot like being married or in a relationship. And I'm not married or anything, but it's like don't go to bed angry. You know what I mean? Is what I hear a lot of people say. And like if you're going like, I mean, I live with people who play Dota, and I play with Roland guys. I've been frustrated beyond the point of no return. Like, just like, why have you cursed me? Screaming out into like the storming sky. But, like, I don't, it's interesting to never make it personal, and I feel like it's easy to kind of make it personal in a game like Dota 2, where you can feel like you have such a good idea of what your team needs to do, and then people don't like pick up what you're putting down. You can feel slighted in ways. And so it's like you don't let those feelings overcome. And if you're going to let that feeling come out right after where you're discussing the match or something, it's probably best not to do it. The Bambi wisdom, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. But you can always be there and just kind of listen to your team decompress as well without saying anything. And I am one of those quiet players at times when I lose, because I don't want to like run my mouth too much, because once it gets running, it never stops. But it's like, there's such a thing as too little communication and too much. You know what I mean? And like finding that boundary is just as important as finding out what to communicate in ways.
Yeah. It's just like Dota, I think for a majority of us is like such an emotional high and can be such an emotional low that like to me it just makes more sense. Like I'm with you, Wazoo, and I've noticed like after some of our losses, like you're definitely quiet, and like it doesn't take me too long to figure out maybe what's that you're not actually quiet. You're probably I could just like imagine you like screaming on the other end, but like it's that like
inside
that release,
my head.
that release is like totally healthy, right? And like it's totally needed, but it would obviously be hurtful if like and non-productive if you said it like over the comms. So like to me, I think it's for a lot of people, it might just be best to like take a break for an hour or two, or maybe wait till the next day, then come back, then like address the loss of the day before.
Yeah.
I think that would be a pretty good approach to it. But a lot of times, like with these amateur leagues and these amateur teams, it's time. Like we all have other things going on in our life, and it's not just Dota. So
So, Blue, what
yeah.
about your type of releases and stuff? Since we're talking about I don't know, how do you handle a loss in that sense on a team?
Well, I wanted to add that they're definitely like I do have a commute, and in that commute, it definitely like stuff like that totally pops up in my head. Like AG is talking about on the train is like,
dude, it's commuting and the shower. Those are the two
yes.
places where I think about
Oh
Dota
my
the most.
god, yes. When
I've
you're
come
like,
up with the most brilliant
who's the
strategies.
ultimate pubbing hero.
I've come up with the most brilliant strategies when I've just been like putting shampoo in my hair. Like,
yes, yeah, and sometimes maybe you need to wait till those moments to talk about what you think could have helped the team, or it's like it's all about self-awareness, especially after a loss, because when you're winning, like food tastes better, like everything's funnier, comedies movies are funnier, just like traffic is shorter, everything feels different when you're winning, and then when you're losing the opposite happens. And it's so weird because you realize it's just a game and it's a silly little thing and it's just a little tournament that you do with friends, but even that little thing can have like an emotional impact, and once you realize that emotional impact is definitely taking a toll on you, you need to like own up to that emotion and go, okay, I'm going to wait till tomorrow, and then we'll have a team meeting and do a replay together. And like you said, the problem is time. And if you don't have time to have that meeting, then maybe it is rushed. And then maybe you do have to say things that you might not even think are the truth if you give it 24 hours in your head,
Yeah. And I think to me, like those recaps, those sort of like taking the pulse of your team collectively as five, like seeing where everybody is like mentally, physically, is actually like more important than getting one more queue in, getting one more captain draft queue in or captain's mode queue in. So like I think it's almost one of those things that you have to sort of like prioritize one of those like once a week or something like that to meet and discuss and like kind of be with your team outside of like a like in the game environment,
moment to moment.
Yeah.
I think it takes a certain amount of depth understanding and like empathy, I suppose, to realize when it's good to push those boundaries. Like sometimes it's just not worth it to push it with people. I've noticed like some people just don't learn that way on our team, especially. And so it's one thing to like point out mistakes, but it's another thing like when someone knows, you know what I mean? And I think people are just worried about talking and it not being constructive after the game wasn't constructive, because you already feel like you've like wasted time if you didn't play your best or you let your team down. You know what I mean? Like some people don't want to just sit there and like talk about what everyone knows. So understanding that line and that boundary, I think, is very important.
But you also need to know that everyone knows that, and I guess the only way to do that is by talking it out.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there are some things that are super obvious. Like, if you take a fight at Roche when, like, you shouldn't have and die and then lose the game immediately. Like, you don't
it's
need
not
to
a
be
science.
Like, it's like sometimes it is pretty obvious.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that those obvious ones are the ones that people assume are going to be talked about, when you have that conversation. Because I've had these conversations where like, hey, you guys want to talk about the game after you're like, or someone's like, there's nothing to learn. Like, we lost that big team fight. It's like, well, there was like 800 things that led up to that team fight, that we can talk about that are actually relevant and can be used to get better at, moving forward. But if you're really that hung up on that team fight, if that's just like I talk about, having a discussion about the game and the only thing you can think about is that team fight, then yeah, maybe we shouldn't have that talk. But the reason for that is that you're so hung up on that,
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes people are that emotional after such a loss that it's like why people tell you not to approach pros at like esports events after they've lost, because it's kind of selfish, like you don't know how they're going to react to that. This is like
and they're also not your teammate.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a different thing. Like a teammate should be able to have that level of, intimacy with the person where they're, they can say how they feel because they, they've just boot camped with them for 2-3 weeks or some shit. Like at the pro level, I'm sure those guys are far more upfront with each other than before. I think even just as an example,
or it doesn't work out given our scene. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
right. But I was going to say
the
is
team
just
breaks
as an
up.
example that they just talked about. I think it was like PyCat or fucking Mad as a coach, and they said that they loved him as a coach because he was he was brutal. Like he just brutally told people, it was like, you were being an idiot when you were going into that position. That was absolutely the wrong thing to do. Or analyzing a draft and going, that draft choice was wrong. And just being able to point it out plainly for what it is.
Do you have to call someone
and
an
being
idiot
honest.
though? I mean, I think that's a big chunk of team relations is like choosing your words carefully.
Well, no, I'm not encouraging anyone calling people an idiot, Wazoo, but I'm just saying that he's apparently they're brutal, and the pros know that, and they kind of take it as is. I'm not saying that's something you have to do. And
No,
yours,
that's not what I'm
just
saying.
as an
I'm just saying
example.
how you say it is almost as important as what you're saying in a lot of those team building experiences. Like, and how you talk to different people on the team is a little different. I mean, you have a different relationship with different people on the team. I notice AG talks to Grouty a little differently than he talks to Chaos, and that's because of levels of comfort, and they play together. He talks to you, even though you're a Smurf, differently than he talks to other people, because you guys play casually together a little bit more. And so it's like, the unless the relationships are across the board on the same level, which they're not going to be, it's an individual thing where you sometimes have to like carefully pick your words, or you're going to lose like rapport with that person. Like, what do you think about that, AG?
Yeah, I mean, like different managing styles for different people, right? Like different forms of teaching for different people. It's the same thing. Like coaching and communication on your team. You kind of learn the more experience you have with different people on your team, the more you learn how to and how not to communicate with that person. In every aspect. So I think that like if you take specific examples, it just may be the case that that's how that coach is, and that's how, like those players are the way they are and can receive it that way.
Yeah.
But that might not work for everybody. But like what a good coach or good communicator is going to be able to recognize that, and is going to be able to tailor his message. He's not going to be one dimensional in how he pushes feedback onto his players, and he's going to tailor it for each individual player in his team. How they need it. So like that's a skill. That's something you learn. That's something you acquire over time.
Mind you, I'm not discussing what I'm not discussing here is talking in game, because sometimes you need to use brevity to get your point across, and that could come off short or whatever. I'm talking about criticizing someone's play and telling them when they've obviously done something really, really stupid. In game, I mean, we talked about it last week. You have to have pretty thick skin in Dota at times, because you can make a huge mistake in seconds and all that. But I think it takes a special skill that I don't even feel I necessarily have to criticize people's play after the game. So it's always interesting for me to see like how people address that, because some people are just to the point, like sports, and you're like, you did this, you dropped the ball kind of thing. And some people really, really try to consider other people's feelings in the way that they're like, it's not that bad, compliment sandwich type people, where you're like, you did this bad, but you did this good, but you did this bad. It's like an opposite compliment sandwich, like the bad's on the outside, the good's on the inside. But it's just interesting to me. I feel like you do have to have thick skin naturally to be any level of player in Dota in a lot of ways, or you just mute everybody if you play solo, I guess. But I don't know. It's always interesting to me, that approach, because
there's a give and take. I mean, the only thing that you haven't mentioned is that there's a give and take on both sides, and not just the coach tailoring, but also the player like making themselves. The term is called making yourself coachable.
Yeah.
Right, being coachable, and that means being open to criticism as well, and owning. Like even if you understand the point, sometimes it's not about you understanding the point. It's about the other team or the other team members understanding the point.
Getting
right?
everyone on the same page, right?
Exactly. So yeah, it's like you could say, yes, I know that the Roche fight, was the problem, or like me decide, me blinking in too early was the problem. But in reality, it's not necessarily about you knowing that. It's about the rest of the team knowing that, so that later on, maybe in the next game, for example, they can rely on you to blink in at the right time, and they'll know to wait that extra 3 or 4 seconds when you actually will go and when you should have gone that original time, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's making yourself coachable in that aspect
That's a good
as well
point.
as from the other side.
Losing the ego. I mean, if we're gonna like boil it down, if anyone's trying to teach you something, you have to temporarily put yourself at that person's, not mercy. I mean, that's wrong. They're not holding a sword to your throat, but I mean, you have to like look up to that person in a sense that they can teach you something, right? Like all you guys, like we play at like a similar level, but I know you guys are better at certain points of the game, so that's why I listen to you. But the problem occurs when you're just like, that person has nothing to teach me. You know what I mean? Why are they talking to me or something like that?
Yeah.
And so to like put yourself and your ego at check, I think is really important, and that's a really good boiled down point of the episode. If I want anyone to take away anything, is what Mr. Blue just said. And that is, you got to make yourself coachable. You got to drop the ego, and you got to realize you're there to accomplish a goal as a team. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to hurt the other person that's on your team. Obviously, you want to accomplish the same goal. And so, like, if you're on a team, you kind of have to give up a bit of the ego for the team and make yourself coachable. I like that a lot. What about you, AG? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like, my personal opinion is, to me, I think it's easier to learn how to tailor your messages and like control your communication than it is to change how you respond to criticism communication. I think like that's something that's a little more like ingrained in us as we like grow, you know, from being very young to, you know, throughout our adulthood. Like, I don't know, that I see, I think both of them can definitely change, and you definitely want to be like, kind of like consider both sides. But like, to me, I think it's easier to tailor your message, to learn how to tailor your message. But I agree with like all the points that are being made. It's always, you know, it comes down to one of those things. It's easier to say than to do. But
and in reality, it's probably a mixture of both. That it's that compromise.
Yeah, it requires
the
both
best,
sides.
Yeah, the best
no
communication.
Doubt. Yeah.
Because by making that bridge between you and whoever you're discussing, you'll build that rapport, like I mentioned earlier, and you're more likely to take that influence and that advice later on. It's just as you build any relationship. And you look at teams now, and this is one of my last points I'm going to make, but you look at teams now going through your growing pains. You got EG and Secret with their mix-up and everything. Other such teams, the list goes on. I mean, you got Virtus Pro and stuff. You're seeing them have a real hard time adjusting to their new lineups. And Virtus is a little older than the other teams. Like, that's a given. But it just takes time. And I think that's another natural ingredient to all this, is you just need to play together. You need to spend the time together so you trust that person and you see their ability. You know what I mean? And once you trust that, you're more likely to have that line of communication.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like the amount of teams that, if you look at the Dota scene in general and compare it to like other aspects of competitive, let's call it sports or like competitive professionalism, like to me at least, like the teams, a majority of the teams like shift their personnel and their rosters so much. It's actually kind of mind-boggling to me to think that like a team can be formed and then a couple months later they could be potentially you know, performing well or expect to be performing well in like some of these high stress events. But you look at other areas of competitiveness, like take, you know, like general sports, like teams don't change nearly as much as they change in the Dota 2 scene. Everything is just sort of like hyper intense. Like it's almost like a season, or what we've experienced this year in Dota on the professional front. Like a season is almost like the time in between each major.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like hyper quick. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
It's a way quicker. And things move quick in esports, and some people could make the argument that these switch ups and stuff it's just detrimental in terms of a investment point of view. I mean, of course, we're not making as big of investment as like sports players make, but you invest so much time playing with this lineup that, like, you know, Old Secret, looking at their lineup, they won the major and then they split up. You know what I mean? And it's like, what results do you need? You know, like there's idealism and then there's getting the results, you know, like teams such as EG got with the international win and Secret. And I mean, that's just the nature of the game, the instability of it all. But it has given us a macro version of what, you know, micro we're experiencing in terms of just team cohesion. Everyone communicates differently, and bridging that gap and understanding how to take calls from somebody that might react differently from a loss or a win or whatever than you, and you, maybe it rubs you the wrong way, or maybe it doesn't, or maybe, you know, you just have a really hard time communicating with them. that can build. It's another skill, and like maybe we should have a communication MMR built into the next compendium that it analyzes all your words over mic and gives you a communication MMR or something. That'd be something to brag about. But
you haven't said synergy 50 times this game.
Yeah.
You know what? 1K.
1K, yeah,
Getting
I'm happy for
Yeah.
that.
French.
The one thing I will say is it's like I think I've for anyone who like follows the competitive scene, we've seen things change like over the last few years, where like the ideas of team houses came about. And in other esports it's happened, and then it's it's come into Dota 2 depending on like the region you're in. But then even like when these teams travel, like some of them bring cooks and like managers that will sort of orchestrate to keep everything as comfortable and as stable as it would be as if they were playing at home. And now we also have seen a rise in coaches. Like teams will bring a coach to a major event. So like teams are trying to find their competitive advantage anywhere they can. So like perhaps one day the coach's role will change to the point that it's like improving the communication or sort of like helping a team to sort of gel together. That wouldn't surprise me. It may even happen already.
I think it does on a different level. I think there, from what I've seen in interviews that the older EG teams held, and in talking about how Boba was on their team, it's just having that sixth person who kind of takes like an almost objective standpoint, in that they don't have any inherent role bias or inherent philosophy that doesn't mesh with a teammate in game. Like just having that separate person that kind of to arbitrate and either decide like, okay, this is the most optimal strategy, or this isn't. It feels like they're a third party that doesn't come into play nearly as much, but can have an impact in the decision making process, because people feel more comfortable with that person making a call or backing up whoever was making that call. It just adds an extra voice in the room that can kind of quiet the dull roar that exists,
and kind of take an objective point of view outside of the game, right? And just kind of look at it and be the eyes over it all, because Dota's an imperfect game when you try to objectively talk about it with the people playing it. I mean, because everyone's getting 1/5 of the pie, and sometimes you kind of think you saw something that you didn't see. How many times has that happened? That you
it's hard to separate yourself from the game when you're in it.
Exactly. And so if someone's out there, that's a really fascinating point. That coach, and you have like the Charlie Yangs of the world who kind of work in like making the team comfortable and managing them and making sure everything happens, like you mentioned earlier. That's a really fascinating point. I haven't really thought about it in that perspective, but it definitely help to have someone facilitating that communicative environment. So I think that's a really great point. If you can have some people watch your games, I mean, we have like Ursinity sometimes sit in and he'll play with us, and then he'll talk to us about what went wrong, and he can be super impartial and objective about it. So that's another thing that we could gladly suggest, and that's find somebody who you trust, who can be kind of impartial and non-emotional about your play. It can really help you improve that team building. We've covered a lot of things you can do to lose better. We're trying real hard to lose better here at Tryhard Tuesdays this week. But do you guys have anything else to add on losing before we move on to the item of the week?
Yeah, I have one thing I wanted to mention, because I don't think we really have touched on it at all, and that is what happens in losses. And then another common thing I see with people when losses occur is there's a philosophy issue, right? Almost an ideology problem, where one player or two, maybe one or two players thinks that that we should have gone with a push strat against that kind of team, and another thinks that we should go for a different lineup, or that you should take the lineup you're playing and play it differently. Like almost just differences that are so much to the core of the team and the way it played that game that, like how do you guys handle those kind of differences? And sometimes those differences can pop up in game too. So how do you handle them after the game is what I'd like to hear.
AG, I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, well, like I think to me, any sort of like macro approach, like a mention that perhaps like, so for us, I'll just kind of break it down with our team. Like Grouty drafts for us, and then we kind of like Grouty kind of knows the complex of our team, knows the strategies that we're comfortable with, knows the heroes that we're comfortable with, sort of makes the draft, and then collectively, and then like it's on me to like kind of guide the game, at least in the early stage, towards that objective. So if we're doing a push strat, like that's the one thing I think about, like in the first 15 minutes, is like, what's our macro objective, and are we kind of like, is everybody on track for it? It's something that's like, it's very difficult to achieve. It's like something that we've been working on together. But I think like that comes down to just collectively everybody being on the same page. It's like not helpful if you draft and all agree to run a certain strat, and then at the end of the game, someone sort of like says, "Oh, well, we should have done this. Somebody should have gotten a Midas to like secure a late game or whatever." I think those are things that, at least to me, in the moment, in the heat of the moment, they might seem like good reasons to come up to justify your loss, or at least maybe justify your play if you had like a particularly off game and you're emotional about it. But it's one of those things that give me 24 hours and a nice warm shower and a nice long commute on the train, and I guarantee you the next day I probably will not be thinking that way. So
yeah, sometimes you need space. I mean, just because you're in a team together doesn't mean you need to work out every little thing, and not having that bitterness in the relationship is really important. So pretty much be a decent person in your teammate relations, and just respect that distance, and also, realize everyone's there for the same reason. I think is something we realize, and like no one's there to like not do their best. And when you realize that, it's a lot better to improve. So lots of good stuff here on this episode about how we at least deal with it on our micro level, and how some pro teams seem to deal with it on the macro level. So yeah, and check out our episode on communication we did a couple weeks back. That was AG's first appearance on this show. He'd been on other shows before, but definitely check that out. It's another episode in this series, and kind of is the base for what we're talking about today. So check that out. And with that being said, I think we've covered it pretty well, guys. That was really, really great. Great having you on. And to close out the show, I would like to talk about the Echo Saber as our item of the week. It's something I've been building quite a bit, and it has an interesting reaction in terms of how it interacts sometimes. Like, you can save a hit. I'm sure you guys have noticed that by now. Like, if you hit and then you save it, you have the next speed of the hit kind of stored up, which is very interesting. It has two items that I never thought would be built together in any chance. And that is the Ogre Club and the Oblivion Staff, and it's a strength / mana item that also gives you attack damage and attack speed. It costs 2,650 gold, and it can be bought from just the normal shop under artifacts. So it's something I've been building on Sven a lot, and that's honestly the only hero I've really been building him on. AG suggested it to me after I saw him build it in the game, and I've been doing it ever since. AUI 2000 also builds it. I've noticed on all of his builds, so I've kind of been checking that out. It helps you clear ancient stacks like crazy, and it also helps those mana issues a bit with his stun. And that's kind of the theme I'm seeing. It gives you that mana for the hero, and it also lets you attack really, really quick without buying that Hyperstone or something. What are your feelings on this item? It is a new item, of course, released just with the most recent patch, but the most recent 6.77, is it? What is it? Sorry.
6.87.
That's right, 6.87. So it is one of those new additions, and it is, I don't know, it's pretty fascinating. What do you guys think of it?
I think I bought it once. Take it away, AG.
No, you go first. You
All right. So I bought this item once. I've seen it a lot. It accelerates Sven's farm like crazy, which is really cool. Makes a lot of sense on him. Makes a lot of sense on people who could use the attack speed but don't, maybe want to get stuff like Blink and BKB early. I've seen it on Wraith King, which seems pretty decent. But he's, I don't know, it's a little weirder on him because Sven is like burst damage with right clicks, which isn't the case with a lot of heroes. There's some other heroes that buy it like, what is it? Like PA. I've seen it on a couple times, which is because honestly, she just needs defensive items to start. She needs like a BKB, and people still get Battle Fury on her, especially with the cleave now. So I'm just like thinking off the top of my head of other heroes that like benefit from this item. But like you said, I was personally surprised to see the components in it put together. I mean, an Oblivion Staff really didn't have a lot of. It was kind of like the redheaded stepchild of items at this point before 687. So it's nice they took it and built it into something. But it's kind of a wonky item, and it like is really cool in very specific circumstances. But when you buy it, you're always wondering, like, should I have spent that 2,600 gold on something else, or waited another 1,300 and gotten like a BKB or something else that can fight better?
And
I
it
don't know,
cannot be it cannot be disassembled. So like you can't break
that's a
it
big
and
thing
build an
about it.
orchid or something and a BKB out of it. Like, but AG, you have any other thoughts? Do you have thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think given that it's a melee specific item, it seems unlikely to me that anybody would break it to build an orchid. That just a general point to that.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know.
fair.
In my mind, like most orchid carriers tend to be
Ranged.
heroes. Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if you could break it and then use the ogre club into like a late game BKB or something. But it does, one kind of weakness to it is it does kind of take up a slot where it has no progression. And I think like certain heroes, that's a big deal. Like Sven, that can be a big deal because there's so many sort of like small, like under 4K items that he buys that don't necessarily build into anything
by the
else.
time you've got the Echo Saber, the BKB, the Blink, and then maybe you have a Chrysalis or something, like you're full up with your treads and like TP. So it's like, what do you do?
But I do think in my mind on a hero like that, when you buy this item, you kind of like recognize your power curves, and especially with Sven, like if you grab this and like I don't know, I'm just sort of spitballing here, but like you grab like an SNY and a Blink, and if you can get those things at like 20 or 25 minutes, like you're gonna be super strong going into most fights with your other basic items in addition to those. So like I don't know. I kind of recognize it as like a power spike on Sven, but I like another hero that I've seen it picked up on is Slark, and I think to me, like when I look at this item, aside from the extra attack you get every 5 seconds, the biggest thing that stands out to me is like the mana regeneration component of this item, and certain heroes I think that synergizes pretty well with. Like, for example, with Slark, I've heard a lot of people say one huge benefit of it, or the one reason why everybody keeps buying it, is that extra attack gives you like the extra essence shift steal, which is definitely good. But to me, on Slark, you kind of tend to have mana issues early in the game, especially if you like pursue a Shadow Blade route. And he doesn't really have a lot of like other mana items that he would buy, aside from maybe like an Aquila or something like that.
Yeah.
But this item gives him like a little bit of extra intelligence to play around with, plus the mana regeneration. So to me, I think that's like one of the biggest synergetic aspects of it. I haven't picked it up on Wraith King, but I think it would be a great item on Wraith King. Anything that has like crit, except for PA, I don't think it's a good item for PA because you already have like a built-in attack speed. Like, why would you need an extra hit?
Spirit Breaker is another one I've seen it on, and that kind of makes sense if you're like a core like off lane Spirit Breaker. If you can get it early on, you do become the Bash Lord.
Plus, so another hero can have mana issues like Spirit Breaker. Like you get an urn on him, and you kind of hope that that's like enough with your power treads for your mana. But you get an Echo Saber, and now you've got a little more mana to play around with. And again, like as we mentioned, I see it as being really good on heroes that have crit, or at least like super high instances of damage, or bash. Right, those are like the 3 categories. So
but you wouldn't
tiny,
like build it on a troll or something because he has that attack speed increase.
I wouldn't. I kind of treat it. It's like a very similar concept to the Hurricane Pike, which is that the item that allows you to attack from a no range restriction. Like on that, you only get 4 attacks over the course of I think it's 4 or 5 seconds. So I want those attacks to hit as hard as possible. So I'm going to pick it up on like a TA, but I wouldn't pick it up on a Wind Ranger if all I have is like an Ags and I'm not hitting very hard. So like Tiny Sven, I think fit that for the Echo Saber. They hit super hard.
There was that Void carry build too, where they built the Echo Saber on him too.
Yeah, that would be I mean, he has a bash, so that makes sense, and he can have mana problems depending on the items.
But getting hits in early problems.
That's the only thing about him is I think it makes it makes sense in theory on the Void, but I don't know. I
This
like
is
it
an
better on
Epicenter.
those slow
I can't remember
hitters.
what team ran it, but it was an Epicenter and he was ran safe lane too. So it was like really weird.
Yes, I'm a big fan of the safe lane Void now.
Yeah, you are a fan?
I am a fan.
Yeah.
I
He
definitely
hits hard.
I think everyone's mind kind of changed over this past couple weeks. But
Well, with the patch, I mean, they made his regular bash damage way, way, way better.
Exactly. Yeah.
he's a
So he's
strong
not
hero.
so chrono dependent.
So check out Void. I mean, he has a new immortal in the compendium, guys. You guys have anything else to add before we close her out? No?
What do you guys think about it on Tiny? That's another hero that hasn't.
Yeah. I'm reading something
I've
here.
seen it a little bit, but
That's interesting.
want to hear
It
your
gets
thoughts.
It lets him get 2 hits in, of course, on the toss. So you toss, get 2 hits in, and then avalanche as they land. Like pretty crazy combo, really. By that point in the game, if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, I think like
Any
especially
support's dead.
for a hero that like used to go boots pretty regularly, and now boots has kind of been relinquished to like the back seat. I get like now this is an item that gives you that extra intelligence component. That like a hero like Tiny or Sven really wanted out of the drums. So like I think like this perfectly sort of like drums disappears out of your inventory. You slot in this cool new item that gives you the extra attack, which really synergizes with the fact that you hit like a huge truck, and then great, it also has like some intelligence for me to play around with, which I desperately need.
Yeah, it's like that drums replacement, but it doesn't give you that move speed.
The movement speed. But who cares about movement speed if you're going to hit something twice?
Blink.
Yeah, that's true.
and
you got blink. Yeah. You got a stun. You're Tiny. You hit twice for like 200 damage or whatever at level 11 or something.
It's all about the burst right now. It's all about burst damage.
Yes, it is. But that's an interesting wrap up there on the Echo Saber. Build it, buy it, but make sure you do it under the right heroes, or you're going to get flamed and reported probably, and we don't want that.
Yeah, like melee heroes.
Yeah, melee heroes. That's a good point AG made. So guys, thank you so much for joining us this week at Tryhard Tuesdays. AG, thank you for joining us again for the next in our series. It's been informative and fantastic having you on, man.
Yeah, I've had a great time.
Where can people reach you? Where can they find you, and what are you up to?
So you can reach me at any time in the Discord, or you can add me on Steam, I suppose. But Discord's probably the best place to find me, and then you can go ahead and follow me at Twitter at ag47_Dota. And
of course, our team is Serene Machine. We're a .p team. Check us out. Maybe we'll start winning like the Mighty Ducks and just win it.
Oh yeah,
win the whole thing like the Mighty Ducks.
You might catch me casting some of the Saturday in houses, which I've gotten back into. Which reminds me, like everybody show up to the Saturday in houses. They're dope.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for plugging that. We always forget. But show up to the Saturday in houses. You can win illustrious prizes, Steam money, and the most coveted thing on the internet points, .p points, where you can climb our ladder. So please join in.
And I can be savage about your build.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't hear him when he does this, but you can listen to it later and cry in your room while you're eating Ben and Jerry's. Why? But
I got a double whammy for you right there. Is your build is shit when ZD is commenting on how bad it is.
Yeah.
Hey.
Wow. Yeah, talk about that.
Okay, Blue. Thank you for joining me. You're always here by my side.
It's been good as a host here. Yeah.
You're fired. No, I'm joking. You're fired. Where can people find you, Blueser?
You find me at .p_Mr. Blue on Twitter. MISTA Blue, and let's see, you can find the YouTube channel at youtube.com/.ptv1. You can catch our in-house action. The VODs are up on the Twitch channel. I don't know if they're going to be going up on the YouTube, but they might be. But I heard it was a good time Saturday. I was busy making a PC for my lazy ass friend who was the PC guy 15 years ago, but he's gotten old and haggard and doesn't remember how to make it anymore. So I had to build that for him while you guys got to enjoy that in-house action. And I saw you and Malastrix fooling around a little bit on the in-house there.
That wasn't the in-houses. That was a game we played earlier. I was gonna play the in-houses, but I fell asleep. So
wow, good story.
That was it. Like my brother didn't wake me up or anything, so I was just like, eh. That was just me and Mally palling around like fools, just old boys on the yard. Is how I'd say it. because he's English, but that's the editor of Join Dota. Cool guy. Check him out. Follow him on Twitter, etc. Plug for you, Mally. And I am the Grand Wazoo, guys. You can find me at .p_wazoo. Reach us at the .p overall Overlord Twitter account, which is at .p_show. Tweet at us your thoughts, your dreams, your fears, your loves of Dota. Let us know how your international ranked queue goes. We'll be continuing this series on team building as the year progresses, leading up to the international, kind of as a tie-in with that. We might be scrubs, but we're trying our best here at Tryhard Tuesdays, guys. Thank you for joining us, and remember, stay hard and stay classy.